Ari, I just don't know what to do when people act shocked at something that has happened, like, for decades. Like, I mean, again, like I said, George W. Bush had to deal with this. Barack Obama had to deal with this repeatedly. Joe Biden had to deal with this. They didn't scream and yell and say we weren't going to listen to federal district court judges. What's changed?
I appreciate your remarks. I think you laid it out for everyone very clearly. What may have changed from the first term is that they know that even on areas where there is deference, national security, immigration being strong executive powers without a ton of interference in the main, but they did lose some cases and see some of those powers narrowed in the first term. And so what they're doing now can only really be described as a more misleading or lawless approach. Now, you can say in fairness, senior officials have blunted what we just saw, the border chief Homan and others saying, oh, we don't care. And then it's a good cop, bad cop thing where other officials.
Hey, Ari, really quickly, just to note here also, as you know, but I just want our people in the audience to know, we had Josh Gerstein on earlier this morning, and he took pains to say the administration's attorneys in court were very deferential to the federal judges and basically said, we will follow your orders. So just wanted to add that in there, too. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, exactly. And that's, I think, all of us both trying to meet the moment of what is, according to the judge, the administration breaking the law, right, invoking wartime powers when we're not at war, and then allegedly and quite possibly violating the judge's order. That's where we are this morning. And so that's very real. We want to meet that moment. We also want to be fair and precise that there's a good cop, bad cop effort to this, because with Trump, there's always, quote, the show. So you have officials who are mouthing off in public, or as you said, screaming on TV. I think that was your term of art, Joe, just screaming on television. And so we have two messages coming out. I do think this is very serious and different than much of what the Trump administration did in the first term, and that we are past the point of, forget what observers say, forget the flight logs. The judge appears to be under the view that they are violating the order, which is why we had the extra sort of special hearing yesterday, and we're going to go forward from there. And so we are barreling towards the question of how does this type of testing, ignoring, as Axios put it in the first exclusive that broke the story this weekend, or defying court orders, how do you deal with that? I know actually you've written a lot about that, so I don't want to get ahead of that, Professor, but that's where we are, and it is serious, while some of the public communications also include Trump hype.
So, yeah, Rick, let's go right there. I mean, you just wrote recently on this very topic, what can courts do if Trump defies them? And at least, even if in the courtroom they're saying we're not doing that, at least not yet, the public rhetoric sure seems like they are, and they're planning on doing it in the future.
Yeah, it's clear that the administration is testing the courts. Yeah. It's pushing the courts. They may not have been in contempt when those flights first went out because the hearing was taking place. The judge hadn't arguably issued that written order, but that was clearly gaming the courts. I mean, you have a hearing going on the very question of whether this is legal, and they sent the planes out in the middle of the hearing. The judge has not yet said that they are defying the court. He's doing what courts always do in these circumstances, which is he's demanding more information, more specificity. He's putting them on the record. He wants affidavits, which are subject to perjury charges if false. And so we're moving in the direction these things always go. If it turns out the executive has defied the court order here, then we start getting into the question of what tools the courts have to deal with a situation like that.
So, Ari, following up on what the professor just said, we know only one thing for certain out of all this. Given the production values and the intensity of production values from the Trump administration, this is going to happen a lot. They're going to go at this every day, this particular topic. That's who they are. Despite the fact that some of the Justice Department lawyers were deferential in court towards the judge, their boss likes this, likes the fight every day. So what do you think will happen when there is an inevitable collision at the corner of Constitution Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue, and they basically say, we don't care what you said, to mimic what Tom Homan says. We don't care what you say. We're going forward with this policy.
Well, I think there's a couple versions of what can happen. One is a more escalated version of what we just described, where they say they want to comply or are trying to comply while basically doing other things or violating. We saw short-term versions of that on the funding freeze fight, but I do think that ultimately involved them pulling back. The other is somebody blinks, the DOJ might back down because you can't find enough people to sign these things. And the third is what we hear as a constitutional crisis. By that term, when we mean the breakdown where it takes the executive authorizing through sometimes the threat of force, the enforcement of the law, and they refuse to do it, you go back. That's the constitutional crisis, right? We're not there yet today, but we could be going there. The other point I want to throw in here to remind everyone, and this is politics, not law, Donald Trump's administration currently lags behind the Biden deportation rate.
Oh, yeah.
The numbers are complex. You guys have covered a lot of this on the show, but I would just remind everyone, they're not coming from the position of, oh, we're doing double the deportations. They're lagging behind Biden's numbers for the last full month we have, February to February, apples to apples. And so they're doing a lot of other things to create the show and to create the energy. And I'm not saying it's only a show, but that's also where this comes from. Having lagged behind Biden numbers, they don't have a bill in Congress. They're doing other things to try to telegraph this extreme, what they call aggressive approach.
Yeah, I reported last week, and others have as well, just how frustrated President Trump is about the pace of deportations. He's pushing his team to pick up those numbers because they're not what he expected. So on this matter, in the latest editorial titled Trump Deportations and the Law, the Wall Street Journal editorial board writes in part this: it's troubling to see U.S. officials appear to disdain the law in the name of upholding it. Are we already arriving at a constitutional impasse when the administration thinks it can ignore court orders? The administration can appeal whatever ruling Judge Boasberg hands down, and the case will go up the appellate chain, perhaps as far as the Supreme Court. What the administration can't do is defy a court order without being lawless itself. Mr. Trump won the election on a promise to deport illegal migrants. His voters will be happy that he is fulfilling that promise. But he has to do it within the bounds of American law, or he will take the country down a dangerous road that echoes the way the Biden administration abused the justice system. Mr. Trump was elected to stop that, not imitate it. And certainly I can hear the fact checkers screaming about that last line, the idea that the Biden administration was abusing the rule of law. But Molly, there is a political part of this, right? Like, we're going to come back to the law in a moment. But there is, we talked about it earlier in the show, that this seems to be a pretty clever play in terms of politics by the Trump team to make this the test case, that these are allegedly violent gang members, although we should be clear, we don't know identities, we don't know charges, and there's at least been some claims from immigration activists say, hey, there's a few cases of mistaken identity in there. You've got the wrong people mixed up here. They're sent to what is considered the most notorious prison on earth. And it's the Trump team basically saying to Democrats, good government groups, you name it, really? You're going to defend these people?
Well, I think Ari has a really good point, just to go back to this, that there are two different fights going on, right? There's the fight going on in the mainstream media with Trump's people, and then there's the fight going on in the court. And those two things are not necessarily, at least at this point, the same. And I think you look back to Trump 1.0, and you saw that happen a lot, right? Where there would be, the administration would be saying something different, telegraphing something different. Can you talk, Rick, a little bit about sort of the Alien Enemies Act? We saw it coming. It doesn't, I mean, isn't the fundamental sticking point here that there is no war?
Yeah, so there are the substantive issues. Can they exercise the power they're trying to exercise? And there are the issues about defying the courts, and are they defying the courts and what happens? So on the substantive issue, they're purporting to use the statute called the Enemy Aliens Act. Well, the very title tells you something about that statute. It was designed primarily for situations of wartime, for a declared war, when there are enemy aliens in the United States.
Only used in wartime.
It's only been used in wartime. There are provisions that they're relying on that say an invasion or a predatory incursion by any foreign government or nation. That's what they're focusing on here, because obviously we don't have a declared war with Venezuela. But those phrases, by any foreign nation or government, indicate pretty strongly that this is not a statute meant to deal with gangs, cross-border measures like this. So, and the statute gives the president very broad powers, which makes it extremely important that we know whether the statute has been legally triggered. And I think that the case for that is, very weak here. That's all apart from the question of complying with the court. So if they want to fight about the meaning of the statute, as Joe said, there's a standard way to do that. You argue in court, you go up to the appellate court. It's not one judge. This will be reviewed higher up. And I also want to point out, this judge only issued an order for 14 days at the most, temporarily pausing the situation. So even this one judge has not permanently enjoined the administration from any of these acts. This is to sort of freeze the status quo, to get more information, to have the legal arguments, fully vetted in the courts. And that's the place to fight this out.
And let's just be clear, we're talking about the invocation of war powers without a war. If a president can get away with that, any president, whether you like their politics or not, then you don't have peacetime law anymore. You just have the use of war powers on whatever they want. And if a president can, during a hearing, say, we don't care what the outcome is, we'll just ship people off, and then the White House claims, I don't think this will stand up in the current Supreme Court, but the White House claims, well, once we get you off U.S. property, you're not protected anymore. Well, then what's to stop them to grab anyone? A political opponent, a dissident, a billionaire, which does happen in China and Russia. You ask these billionaires how good their money is if you end up in a full autocratic system. Obviously, no one is safe in a system like that if they say, well, we'll ignore the courts, then we'll move you off property. Then you're not in U.S. jurisdiction anymore. We could do whatever you want, whatever they want. Nobody, I think, seriously wants to live in that society. You just have some people who think it won't happen to them, which speaks to what Joe said at the top of this conversation.